Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, quick to the point, no faking. It's game week.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach, a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. And you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. So get with it and begin your coaching legacy today. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, we've arrived. Game week is upon us. Coaching legacies to be affected for better or worse. Now, moving forward, we've got some honest-to-goodness college football games in our rear view you might have taken in over the weekend in a handful of locales, but we'll have one coming up right here in the LBK as Abilene Christian fits the description of the first potential victim as Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders look to get off to a better start than we did a season ago, of course, on the road away from home. But one thing we'll get to today is still obviously some danger that is involved in every opener as you trot things out for the first time. And we want to get into some things left unsettled as you mostly, I guess, wrap up fall camp and now transition into preparation for the Wildcats and beyond. But hallelujah, regardless of all of those things, we've made it back to college football season.
Yeah, and camp it's over. Now it's, all for real. It all counts now. You've had the snow cone day. You've wrapped up everything. Everybody's shaking hands and you move on and you get ready for why you do this. As Spike Dykes used to say, this is why you lift all them weights in the off season. But now you're here, and ask SMU and Florida State if openers are easy. It doesn't matter where or who. There's more change in this sport in the off season than ever before because of the portal and because of all the different dynamics and again, an early loss for some isn't as big of a deal as it maybe used to be because of the expanded playoff. But there's still things that people don't know about their teams. And you don't ultimately know that until you get out there and you start playing and you play somebody else. And prime example last year with the Red Raiders. It took a bit to realize what you were on offense that you just didn't have a great feel for. So, but we're here now, and with the Red Raiders opening up at home this year, which is great. There's going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance with that opener, with the stadium renovation and all the bells and whistles that come with that. What does that do to the home team? Does that freak any of these young kids out? Does that, I don't know. Does it freak the road team out? All are possible, but that's the fun part about this stuff is it's about to be show and tell.
Well, and I'm kind of curious, and I know everybody's got maybe their own answer to this sort of question, but where a standard or a baseline kind of expectation is for this point in Joey McGuire's career as a Texas Tech head coach. I thought it was interesting. I don't know how many people saw this, probably plenty that are on Twitter, but I know not all of you live your lives on Twitter, and good for you if you don't. But somebody making a comment about the temperature, I guess, of Joey McGuire's seat rolling into this season. And I think it was maybe in reference to a national ranking that was put out, like, hey, here's the guys whose seat is the hottest, here's the coolest. And one Cody Campbell responded to that tweet, a fairly influential voice in the world of Red Raider football, responded to that tweet saying, Joey should be in the bottom 10. He ain't going anywhere. And I'm paraphrasing, may have missed a word here or there, but that was the gist of his point. Now, I know you can't just roll it out there and get beaten and embarrassed throughout the year and still feel like, yeah, he ain't going anywhere. But I do kind of wonder what most Red Raider fans and boosters, supporters, administration are expecting out of this season, Chris, because there's no question that he has restored a pulse to the program. I think he has kind of gotten you back to sort of a baseline pulse, I guess, to where you should be as a program, obviously going to bowl games, and we hope competing for things more interesting in the conference moving forward. But as we all know, it's a new era in the Big 12 Conference. 2 blue bloods are off of your schedule. That's got to mean something from a win standpoint, and that is in addition to what we hope is an improved football team in and of itself, regardless of who is on the schedule. Some of those McGuire recruits and some of those athletes that have now kind of worked their way through a couple of years in the program are starting to show up on your depth chart, or maybe even as starters. So I don't know that it's now or never time necessarily, but this is when you want to see some of that pay off. I think he's taken some appropriate steps for the first couple of seasons with the years that he had, finishing the way that he did, what he's done in bowl games. But I know he's not just here for bowl qualifying seasons and bowl wins. You're wanting to go beyond that. So I really wonder maybe what Coach McGuire is feeling like this week and kind of the pressure that's surrounding he and his staff to take another step in the right direction.
Yeah, and there may not be anybody in the tech world, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. Maybe just the Texas Tech universe, if you will, that has more influence on that decision of if Joey's safe or not than Cody Campbell. But Cody's not alone in those thoughts. I think that Joey has earned their trust. I think they like the direction that this is going. I think that they love the energy that he provides on a daily basis. All the things that this program was lacking and the excitement around it. And I think Joey, if anything, he has to temper his excitement at times, which is why Joey always says in public settings, he always references Kenny Perry, because I think Kenny Perry tries to even out Joey's excitement. Like Kenny's more of a realist and more of a, they're the yin and the yang kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, heading into year 3, there's a lot of things that Joey hasn't done. He would be the first one to tell you. But if you look at what he was tasked with, improving recruiting, check. Winning more games in the Big 12 than not, check. Done it back-to-back years for the first time since 2009, mind you. Getting to bowl games and winning them, done it twice. And I think winning at home. Finishing strong. I mean, there's a lot.
Improving as the season goes on.
There's a lot that he has done, and and then if you want to criticize, and Joey would be the first one to tell you, we have to be better on the road. We haven't challenged for a conference championship. Have we really made ourselves nationally relevant? That's all. Those are all fair questions to wonder about. And Joey, obviously he's not satisfied. I mean, I think he feels a lot of pressure in that it's not about whether he is on a hot seat, because he's just not. That's just not the case. But he doesn't want to, let his team down, but he doesn't want to let the people that believe in him down. That's really maybe paramount. The Cody Campbells, the Pat Mahomeses, the Kirby Hocuts, the Dusty Wombles, the President Skuveneks, those that really just have tried to give him whatever he needs. He doesn't want to let those folks down because of all that it takes to try to compete these days. So that may be where he feels the most pressure, or whether what keeps him up at night is he just doesn't want to let those kinds of folks down. And he's looking at those 100+ kids that play for him and wants them to, achieve their dreams and successes and all those things and push this thing forward. But it's going to be interesting to see, because what you ultimately want to see this year before we get going is I always say this, you just want to see progress. And when you get really good, it's hard to show progress, because you've kind of, I always say it's easy to get good. It's harder to stay good. That's just the battle that everybody always faces. I mean, what are the folks at Georgia saying this year? Got to win it again, and if you don't, it's a failure. That's a hard deal to live up to there. But that's where everybody is trying to get to where they can be at the top of the mountain and then kick everybody that's trying to climb to the top, kick them back down the hill. So I'm excited about watching what this group, provides. I think there's a lot of excitement about just the stadium in general and all that will come with that. But openers are tricky, man. I think you could go see a point spread and it may have moved slightly, but that you're favored over ACU by 32 points or whatever, somewhere around in that range. But SMU was favored by the Wolfpack in Reno over the weekend, I think by 28.5 points. Barely won, threw a touchdown with a minute to go.
Yeah.
This is just the sport, and there's
why
more.
You play the game.
That's right, and there's more danger out there than ever before with these Power Four versus other teams in some ways because of the portal. You don't look over there at the FCS opponent or the brand new D1 team or whatever they are and go, oh, we're so much older and bigger and stronger than they are. No, because they've portaled too. They've gotten a bunch of, we can go through a list of examples that ACU is going to have of guys that not only played for you, but played pretty well for you at times. And they weren't quite good enough to stay here or whatever reason, or they wanted to play more. The Trey Clevelands of the world. He made some big catches for you in Joey's first year. I think obviously the Nehemiah Martinez, they're just different folks. Jed Castles was a, Maverick McIver, on and on. And we'll get to all that as the week goes along, but they're just scary because there's just certain things you may think about your team, but you just don't. And you don't know how kids are going to respond when fireworks are going off, the band is really loud, the sound system is going crazy, people are yelling, my communication's not working. Hey, I didn't see the sign. What signal are you sending in? Oh, there's this 2-minute warning now. What's this all about? There's lots of stuff. And that's what keeps coaches up at night about having inexperienced players because, Rabbit's not back there anymore. Bradford and Hutchings aren't there anymore to calm everybody down. Baron Morton, this is kind of a new version of this is the first time he started the first game of the season and been kind of the guy throughout an off season. Is he amped up? You just don't know.
Yeah, everybody's feeling good. Everybody's feeling excited about the possibilities, but we figure out what really the reality is going to be when the rubber meets the road, and it'll take some time. With all due respect to Abilene Christian, obviously it's not something that's going to be comparable to what you'll see in the Big 12, but you don't have a whole lot of time to get the engine revved up as you hit the road early on in your season for what was previously a power conference foe in Washington State. We'll circle back to some of what we're going to anticipate, obviously, in the opener and as the week goes on, get ready for the Wildcats. But keeping it kind of focused on Texas Tech, Chris, I'm curious as we leave fall camp, what's got your attention as far as things that are still sort of fluid or remaining unsettled? And as we've talked about, there are position groups where you're penciling in starters, but we know that there are going to be, multiple guys, obviously, that are taking significant snaps within a ball game. So not really talking about those groups necessarily, but some of those that we've discussed ad nauseum almost throughout fall camp. Offensive line for good reason. Still thinking about a kicking competition possibly that's playing out. Does it actually have legs? And then some things that are in a different kind of category, I think, as far as the urgency, but still very, very important. Things like ball carriers behind Taj Brooks and how you're sorting out some of those things. So take it wherever you want to, but what are some of those types of conversations that are still standing out to you as we get into this game week? First, today's episode brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Locked On Texas Tech fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Red Raiders? From recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, to overseeing training camp and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Think you can handle the pressure? Find out today. And even better, Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline, so you can play on the go as you want and when you want. And of course, we've got a special offer for Locked On Texas Tech fans. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost for your program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk, as it's going to help your team get off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or find it in the app stores, and kick off the ultimate football experience with Ultimate College Football Head Coach now and begin your coaching legacy today. What are some of those types of conversations that are still standing out to you as we get into this game week?
Yeah, these are the things that I would be surprised if Joey's not asked about throughout the week in his various settings. Obviously, he's got his coach's show later in the week, and he's got a press conference early in this week as well. And so he's going to be asked about. That's kind of what I was thinking. Okay, if I was sitting there and I just had a one-on-one question session with him, these are the questions that I'd want to know, because I don't know if we know the answers yet. They may, but I don't know if we're there yet. Does the offensive line have are you settled on how this game will begin yet? He's going to be asked about this, and what is his answer? Because it could be. And I'll just introduce you to a new scenario, because I think I'm trying to remember, we had like A, B, C, but maybe we even go A, B, C, D here. And it involves 6 players. That I don't think hasn't changed, unless there's somebody got dinged up or whatever, and then that decides it. But I'm not aware of that being the case. So we've stated that Caleb Rogers, Vinny Scurry, and Sheridan Wilson are going to start. It's just a matter of, where does Caleb Rogers start, and that affects everything else. Because I could see everything from, just to recap this, to Caleb and I think what was interesting is Joey said in one of his press conferences, and this is what we started getting to the Ty Buchanan part of things, is that I think Joey said, there's just certain guys that are very comfortable on one side or the other. I mean, some kids, it doesn't matter if you flip them left, right, that their brain works this way. It appears that Caleb is just much more comfortable and suited, and he just feels better about being on the right side of the line for whatever reason. And so this is where you're at. And he's practiced a lot of right guard. I wouldn't rule him out at right tackle. I mean, that's why we kind of introduced the Buchanan thing. So Caleb will either start at right guard or right tackle, would be my guess. Then you have to figure out everything else from that point, because it's everything from Sterling Porche being out of the starting lineup, Davion Carter being out of the starting lineup, or Ty Buchanan being out of the starting lineup. And Porche being out may involve, it could mean Ty Buchanan at left tackle, Caleb Rogers at right tackle, Carter at right guard. It could mean Porche at left tackle, Caleb at right guard, and Buchanan at right tackle, which puts Davion Carter on the bench to start out. So that's where you're at. I'm trying to figure out what they've got all this offseason. At some point in a meeting, if they haven't already, they're going to have to sit down and go, okay, we got to release this depth chart. How are we doing this? And then you have to go in and talk to your guys. Okay, hey, here's what we're going to do, and here's why. Like, don't, and then you risk one of them getting very discouraged, because I mean they've been practicing and all that. So I don't, nobody knows the blown assignments or the pancake blocks or the reps or the whatever. I mean, all the stats that they would provide, or the GPS and all the stuff. Whose weight is right, who's been on time all the time. There's a million things that could factor into why they lean one way or the other. But that's number one. I do think you mentioned the behind Taj Brooks, because we know Cameron Valdez will be involved at some level, but I'm curious if Cam Dickey is healthy and if he's got any practice time to legitimize that competition, because I think if you listen closely, you would know that Cam Dickey was maybe winning that backup race or head to head with Cameron Valdez before he went down and missed a week plus of camp. So where's he at going into game week? And if not, then it's Valdez by default. Then you get into kicker, which I thought was funny because you said it has legs. I mean, that's the problem is you've got multiple, and I just am going to maintain that I think that's Gino's job. I just do. I think Reese Burkhart's your kickoff guy. I just don't envision a scenario to where Gino's sitting over there and Reese Burkhart is handling kickoff and kick duties based on what we saw Gino do last year. I don't buy it. Gino would have to miss quite a few and then go, okay, man, we got to try something different. And I just don't see that as an issue. And then the last thing I'll go roster wise is more of a bigger picture, but they keep talking about depth and a lot of folks on defense that are going to play. How true is that? Or how, when it comes down to it, are you willing to take CJ Baskerville out? Are you willing to take Braylon Lux and sit him over there next to you? It's kind of like the Taj Brooks conversation. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to take Jacob Rodriguez and Ben Roberts out and Quincy Ledet, which these are, your kind of small group of very experienced players that we know are good, and allow some of this depth to play and make mistakes, because there will be some made with inexperience. That's just what happens. So, but here we are. Like I said, show and tell. We're again, back to you. We can kind of take it wherever you want after kind of laying all that out.
Well, I just one more note, I guess, on the running back situation. I'm really interested. I mean, Coach McGuire has gotten me really interested in Jacoby Williams. I mean, he's calling him a difference maker. I know that we didn't come into this year thinking he's going to find a way to insert himself there full time. I think a lot of us believing, he's bound for a red shirt in some way, shape, or form. But that does mean we could still see him, obviously, in a percentage of games. And if you are a difference maker and you get out there on the field, I wonder if he's someone that maybe does something early on that would kind of dictate that, yeah, we'd like to keep him in the mix. I have no idea. That seems still so far off, but he's gotten so much praise from Coach McGuire, and it just goes back to what you referenced there with the Dickey injury that kind of opened up some room to get a few more carries in camp. So that may be a conversation we look back on and say, yeah, that didn't become anything more than a guy really making you excited about the future, but that being a longer term future. So we'll see. But I do think the kicker thing, not that this year is any different than any other, but of vital importance, because I feel like you're going to be back in so many situations where it's tight in the fourth quarter. And if we're considering the Big 12 conference to kind of be, parity HQ as far as college football conferences across the country, very likely to lead to some really tight stuff there late in the ball game as far as a chance to win. And you may remember it, I've forgotten now, but the percentage of games that were decided by one score or one score difference in the fourth quarter, the Big 12 had the highest total, and I don't think that's going to change moving forward. So how often will 3 points or the possibility of that maybe decide how you're feeling on the following Monday? I think it's safe to say fairly often. So that's a really important thing to see play out. And hopefully Gino Garcia is a guy that continues to man that spot very well, as he finished very well a season ago.
Yeah, I think it was 42% of Big 12 games a year ago were decided by one score or less, which was that just speaks to the margins are really small, and little things matter and they add up. And if, that's why analytics and nutrition, everybody's trying to find just small advantages here and there wherever they can find them, because they add up. And it's going to be those plays that are made in the fourth quarter at the end of a game, or a field goal that you feel like, okay, we got 3 in our back pocket. Well, if you don't get it, it's just because, I think I saw this over the weekend that the Florida State Georgia Tech game had 14 total possessions, 7 by each team, which that's a different. It's like playing Kansas State at times. You're only going to get the ball so many times, and then you press when you're like, okay, we can't go 3 and out. We may only get it 1 or 2 more times. That's why the analytics thing plays such a heavy factor into some of the thinking, because you have to push that button when you have the ball and things like that, and try to create your own luck at times, because you may not have enough time left or enough possessions left to get back in a game or to whatever it may be. But that's that is certainly something that, I'm going to be disappointed if Gino disappointed is the wrong word, I guess, but I just think he'll be fine. And I don't know what all has gone on in practice. I just know what he did last year, and
when the lights were on.
Yeah, short of the opener, he was percentage wise, I think, the best kicker in the Big 12. He just had some mishaps in the opener, one of which should not be attached to him, but it's kind of like an interception when the quarterback throws it and the receiver it goes right through the hands, tips up, and because it shows up on the quarterback's stat sheet, not the receiver.
One thing I really would say for me personally, just as a fan, as far as a storyline going into the year for the coaching staff. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of do-it-yourself projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you're getting your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5 Hour Energy shot. 5 Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5 Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. And even better, you can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Hurry, because this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day and boost your life and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. One thing I really would say for me personally, just as a fan, as far as a storyline going into the year for the coaching staff, is the management of games and how that kind of ebbs and flows throughout the season. I feel like, you go back early on last year against Wyoming in the opener. I thought there were some points in the game where there was like some lost time or whatever way you want to describe it that maybe could have been handled a little bit better. Again, in hindsight, that being 2020, we all remember the 4th and 2 against Oregon, which still boggles the mind to me. But again, I don't have the analytics sheet. I think you go back to, was it 2 years ago? And this has happened a few times, but the Kansas State example, I remember, it's like I barely got into my first beer and we're already going for it on 4th down on our own, like 30-yard line. It's like, whoa, what are we doing here? So it's been an aggressive coaching staff. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I know it's not just Joey McGuire, not just Zach Kittley. There's like a brain trust there that decides these things. But I don't think that has been, if I had to give them a mark, I don't know that I would give them an A necessarily in that category. Again, it may just be my preference as far as the way that I like to see kind of a football game ebb and flow. And I'm not the guy that's under the headset, so it doesn't matter what my preference is. But that's one thing that I feel like beyond the players or beyond some of the things that we've described, I'm really curious to see how they kind of manage these things and whether or not, Coach McGuire still kind of remains a riverboat gambler of sorts. Remember, we had so much talk in his first year about the book. Well, we look to the book. We look to the book. Like, I don't know, every once in a while I may say, the hell with the book, because we got to lead at home and we're on our end of the field against the Oregon Ducks. But that's his call to make. So that's one thing that I'm really interested in rolling into this year beyond personnel matters, is to see if there's any change there, or maybe if there's any more kind of judiciousness early on. My guess is the answer is no, because I think that's his style. And, more power to him. Again, his name's on the contract. So if you're going to go down doing it the way that you want to do it. That's why you're here, and that's why you were the selection. But that's one of the things I'm really interested in this year, is to see if that's evolved at all. You think I'm right in my guess that the answer would probably be hell no? Aggression is still the name of the game?
Yeah, I think this is just their belief. And you can't – if this is how you roll, you can't really waver from it. You either do it or you don't. We've talked about this before. Like, if you pick and choose, then it doesn't – you're not really doing the whole analytical thing. They're trying to play the numbers, and I think that there's been times before where they would have loved to redo, or they have said, okay, I know what it says, but in this particular case, because of the weather, because of an injury, because of whatever, we're not. But I would be willing to tell you, more often than not, they do what it says. Then it's a matter of play call or when to use a timeout or whatever it may be.
Oh, and then that execution part of it comes into play as well.
1,000%.
Going back to Tom Landry, the system is perfect. The players are the ones screwing it up.
Yeah.
There is that human aspect of having to go out there and actually execute it. Which
didn't what was it? Rich McKay, the old coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in the day. How did you think about your team's execution today? And he's like, I'm in favor of it.
We're all on the same page there.
Yeah, that's right. But I do think they will lean heavily on that. I just think that's who they are, and it worked. It worked quite a bit early on in his tenure, because that's how you beat Texas and how you beat Houston and some of those overtime games initially. Because had you not rolled the dice and put the foot on the gas, you don't win those games. And
6 for 8 on fourth down, still a number that just blows me away. I think against the Longhorns a couple of years ago here in Lubbock. Chris, real quick before we get out of here, just circling back to this opener in particular, as you roll things out for the first time, obviously there's an unknown factor and some danger inherent there. But one of the things I'm really interested in is the fact that there is a lot of known about this opponent and what they know about you, because Keith Patterson is leading the charge. I think a guy that both you and I were fans of in his time here in Lubbock. So I think that's an interesting layer to this, is the familiarity that obviously he's got with this program.
Yeah, he knows what he's getting into. And I think it's interesting because he was prime example on, I think this was an opener, but remember the Houston Baptist game here several years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And that was pucker time. for the home team and the home crowd and everything, and you're going, oh my gosh, what is going on? Well, Keith Patterson was trying to get that stopped, and Zach Kitley was over there on the other sideline dialing him up with Bailey Zappi and the Stearns brothers and the whole deal. And now it's a bit reversed. So Keith will be well aware of what Zach is capable of from throwing it all over. But yeah, there's a lot of familiarity with the roster. There's several ex-Red Raiders on this ACU team, ex-coaches on this ACU team, and I'm a Keith Patterson fan. I don't mind telling anybody that. He is largely responsible for your turn in defensive prowess around here. And if you don't believe me, call Jordan Brooks up and ask Jordan Brooks who he gives the most credit to for not only himself and how he found himself in the first round of the NFL draft, but just the team in general. And he's going to tell you Keith Patterson. And they still have a relationship and still talk. And that kind of stuff goes a long way with me, because that's the respect of the peers and just different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Keith is a dude, man. He's a West Texas guy, and he's well aware, and we'll get into more of him and all the guys on the roster as we go along this week. But yeah, there's a lot of familiarity, but then again, there's not. And that's what is interesting about college football in 2024. Keith is going to call defense for the first time at ACU since he got there. He's been more of an overseer, and now he's going to, I'm going to be more hands-on. I'm going to call the defense. That's what I do. They brought in an offensive coordinator from Valdosta State. So everything you're watching from last year, if you're Texas Tech, isn't really what it is now. So there is a lot of unfamiliarity. And then they've had so many roster changes, and you have too. I think if you're ACU and you're looking at Tech from last year, well, there's probably a lot more difference of the way you're going to run your offense because of the skill that you feel like you now have. That is going to be vastly different than how it looked last year, when it was more 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And we're going to throw it around really to set up the run. And then defensively, you kind of here's all these old guys. We know what they're going to do, and we're not going to play as deep of a rotation. Now we've got a lot more speed, we feel like, and depth, we feel like, is what you hear. And then, so, there is some unfamiliarity, and it's why it's a bit scary, because you go into the game going, I think I know what they're going to do, but I'm not real sure. And that's what keeps coaches up at night, because if you're Texas Tech, these are the kind of games where you can only make news for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hope to see a lot of these games lessen as we get into this expanded playoff era, and curious to see how schedules will be made. But nonetheless, you got it this time around. If it is interesting for any reason, that's probably bad news for Texas Tech. So we want to have it be a seamless outing, boys. No pressure. Just play good in all aspects, get a win, and move on to week 2. We will circle back to some thoughts from Keith Patterson this week. Also, of course, we'll hear from Joey McGuire, depending upon when you are hearing this, may have already had his press conference, but having that to kick off the week. Coach's Show and more coming up as we are into it. So glad to be here, and thank you guys for being out there as we get ready for the season opener coming up Saturday night from Jones Stadium. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one.
Game week, people. We made it. So give each other a self high five, or not each other, but give yourself a self high five or a pat on the back, whatever you want to do. Yeah, the national nightmare is over. Football is back, and we will embrace it like no other. But yeah, thanks for listening. We will talk to everybody tomorrow.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. We appreciate you being out there and hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.